Hello, I would like to take a minute to speak with you about attendance and time off. I'm going to go over our attendance policy and just discuss the issues we have with attendance here at ABM. So, attendance, your attendance, punctual, correct attendance for the job for which you've been hired is very important. We have a pretty high absentee rate, and that rate of unexcused absenteeism, and that's the important word, unexcused, uh, is very important because it affects everyone. Absenteeism, to some degree, is expected. There's going to be times when people have to call off work because they're legitimately sick. In fact, the number one policy is that if you are sick, don't go to work so that you don't spread whatever it is you have around your fellow workers. But to call in sick all the time is a problem. If you're going to miss multiple days of being sick, you must bring a doctor's note in order for that absence to be considered excused. If you miss a few days with that throughout the year, then that's not a problem. But when we have excessive unexcused absenteeism, that becomes a problem, and we're dealing with that problem now. And I'm sure we have in the past, and I'm sure we will in the future. So try to bring that number down a bit by having this training to support the work of their supervisors, that we get everything taken care of that we need to do. So when you continually miss work, then somebody else has to do your job. If somebody else has to do your job frequently, what do we need you for in that position if you're not there to perform the duties for which you were hired? Everybody has specific job description and duties. We need you to come to work and fulfill those duties, tasks for which you have been hired. It's not only part of our contract compliance that we do these things, it's just good workmanship for you to do so. And it creates a burden for others when you don't do that. Yeah, like I said, someone else has to go do your job plus their job. And if it happened once in a while, that's understandable, especially since you can schedule things in advance. Whether it's you need to schedule an absence in advance, or whether you need to schedule your vacation time, PTO, paid time off, that's something that you need to do in advance with your supervisor's knowledge so that we can deal with these things correctly. Because with the level of absenteeism we have at times, we're not making the hours that we're supposed to be spending out here that we've contracted with Falcon Jet to do, and these things are looked at and discussed in meetings that we have. They can tell based just upon the hours that we work. We track how many hours per day, how many hours per week, how many hours per month, how many hours per year that we're out here working. These are labor hours, and based upon those results, they know kind of how we're doing. If we say we're going to work 1,000 hours and we only work 800, well, then we're short a bunch of labor hours, and that means something was not taken care of properly. And so these are important aspects of the job. Bottom line, if you're hired to do a job, I need you here to do that job. I tell everyone that in the interview. I just need people to be responsible and accountable and to come to work, do the job for which they were hired. There's no other pressure on you other than just to come to work and do the job for which you were hired. So I want to go over some of the attendance policy, because write-ups have been issued, will continue to be issued, and after you get a write-up or two, if you have this continuous problem, you can and will be dismissed from your job, and there will not be any unemployment or anything for you to get because you were termed for cause. And that's what's important about that. So ABM employees are expected to be punctual and regular in attendance, arriving for work as scheduled, on time, and prepared to start work. You don't come to work I've seen this over and over again. People come to work, clock in, and then they go get ready for work. And they sometimes walk right back outside and go to their car and do this, that, or the other. Well, those things are unacceptable. When you come in and clock in, you're ready to go to your area and start to work. Employees are expected to remain at work for their entire work schedule, except for their meal break periods, which you must clock out for, or when required to leave for ABM business, or like a fire alarm goes off or something like that. So it's important that you come to work and that you stay within the parameters. You are, as a full-time employee, you get 2 15-minute paid breaks, or you don't have to clock out. You just take a break for 15 minutes early in the shift, and towards the end of the shift you get another 15-minute period to use to do what you need to do, whether that's go to the smoking area or get a snack or whatever. That's up to you. If you are full-time and you working 6 hours or longer, you must take a unpaid 30-minute meal break, which you clock out for. So you clock out, you're on your own time. You can walk outside the gate. You can go to Burger King, whatever you want to do, you can go do. Then you come back to work, clock in, and go to work. That's on you. I have instances here currently that I'm dealing with for which we are issuing corrective action for people who go outside the gate for extended breaks, sit in their car, do whatever they're doing, come back in an hour later, 45 minutes later, an hour and a half later, all different kinds of things. In the 11 years I've been here, I've had everybody try and do everything sitting outside the gate. Well, all it takes is I just go to Falcon Jet Security and say, I need to see the badge receipts for this employee. Well, they print all that up, and I can see every time you walked out the gate, every time you came in, it tells me what time you came in, the turnstile, what time you left. Every time you swipe your badge, it's logged and accounted for. So it's very easy for me to determine how long you were outside the gate, not performing your job. And so many times people go outside and sit in their car for anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour or longer, and they didn't clock out. That's easy to correlate as well. That is what HR, Human Resources, calls theft of time. It's no different than stealing money. If you steal time, it's exactly the same as stealing money. They frown very highly upon that. You can be immediately terminated for that instance, and or write up, just depending on several factors. But the bottom line is, if you're outside the gate and you're not clocked out, that's a 15-minute break. If you're out there for longer than that, you are in violation of ABM policy. So also late arrivals, tardiness, also early departure. We have a lot of people that just come in and do their thing, clock out and go home, and don't even tell anybody that they've left. They just leave. So that's unacceptable. If you're leaving before your appointed end of shift, you must notify your supervisor that you plan to leave early, that you just got to do that. That's just part of being a good steward and as an associate. We need to know if you're here or not here. If there's an accident, an emergency, anything can happen. We need to know who's still in their areas working and who's not. And the quickest way for us to know that is for you to report into your supervisor, which is just standard business policy. Anything unanticipated and unapproved absences from scheduled hours are disruptive and must be avoided. Such tardiness and absence causes problems for the employees' supervisor and coworkers. When an employee is tardy or absent, the employee's assigned work must be performed by others. Poor attendance and or excessive tardiness will not be tolerated and may lead up to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. And people have been terminated from their positions here just for absenteeism, excessive absenteeism. What I would term excessive, unexcused absenteeism is not tolerable in the workplace. In the absence of a specific local policy, if an employee is unable to report for work on any particular day, the employee must call his or her supervisor at least 1 hour before the time that the employee is scheduled to begin work that day. Now, if you're driving to work and you got a flat tire and you're pulled over on the side of the road, call your supervisor, tell them the situation, let them know what time you'll be here, and give us a heads up. You might not have an hour, but if it's something else, you do. So just circumstances would dictate the flexibility of the policy. If the employee calls less than 1 hour before the scheduled time to begin to work and does not arrive in time to begin to work, the employee will be considered tardy for that day. This may be considered cause for denial of the absence pay, and if you had that, so you can be denied. Say you don't call in till the last second, say I'm going to take a vacation today. No, you got to have a legit reason for these things. Employees must also inform their supervisor of an expected duration of any absence. If you're going to miss more than a day, if you're going to call in and say, hey, I get the next 3 days, I'm off, I got a doctor's note, well, we need to see that doctor's note. If absence is related to serious medical condition or disability, the excessive absenteeism policy may not apply, but still these things have to be documented. An absence is defined as failure to report for or remain at work as scheduled. So if you fail to report to work or do not remain at work according to your work schedule, that is considered absence. You clock out early and leave and don't tell anybody your absence without permission. That's unexcused absenteeism. So this includes arriving late and leaving early. So unless an absence has been authorized in advance or is unavoidable, every employee will be expected to work as scheduled. ABM defines excessive absenteeism as 3 or more absences in a 6-month period. Okay, this is unexcused absenteeism according to ABM policy. 3 unexcused absences in a 6-month period, and you're setting yourself up for your first corrective action. In the absence of a specific office or branch policy, the following guidelines for excessive absenteeism will be used. So an informal warning, which would be like a verbal warning, for 3 absences in 6-month period. You're going to get your verbal warning, hey, you've missed, unexcused, in this amount of time period, just giving you heads up. If this continues, we're going to escalate this process. The next is a formal warning, which is a corrective action write-up for 4 absences in a 6-month period. So just in the 6-month time period, if you miss 4 times unexcused, you are due for a formal corrective action. And then after that is probation and or termination for more than 4 absences in a 6-month period. So you can see within a 6-month period, you can quickly get yourself into trouble with the policy just based upon unexcused absenteeism. It becomes excessive, it's just unexcusable, and we must deal with it. We try to be understanding with people and their issues and problems and life situations and all these kind of things, but the bottom line is you got to come to work and you got to do the job for which you were hired. Otherwise, we don't need you, and we need someone else who is willing to come to work and do the job for which they're hired. You get these write-ups, a couple of consecutive ones. It's sent into human resources. They'll make the determination whether I need to proceed with termination or what, but I can guarantee you termination is what will happen if you have multiple write-ups for the same issue. So an unreported absence or failing to comply with worksite calling in sick procedures. So you got to call in sick if you're going to be sick. 3 consecutive work days. So if you do this 3 days in a row, what we call no call, no show. If you're no call, no show 3 times in a row without proper notification to the company, to us, your supervisors, your assistant manager, or managers, you will be considered a voluntary termination of employment. In other words, as far as we're concerned, you quit your job. We don't see you for 3 days. We don't hear from you. You're done. You're terminated for that issue. So it's just really important that everyone understands the importance of coming to work and doing the job that you're hired. That's the main thing, because it just becomes a burden for everyone. So we've got days, so like a Friday will come along, and we have several call-offs on first shift, and then on second shift I'll talk to the supervisor or assistant manager, and there's like 6 people called in just at the last minute. All of a sudden can't come to work. Well, that's 6 people's jobs still have to be done, and this happens a lot. These things are being tracked, and going to ramp up the tracking of these things even more because of the impact it has on the operation. It's important. It's very important for yourself and your job, and for ABM team members here and us as a contractor, that we fulfill the duties for which we've been contracted to do. There's a scope of work that we have to complete daily to be in contract compliance. In order to do that, we need our labor staff to be here fulfilling those things. And when these are not done, we have deficiencies in service. These deficiencies begin to add up, and they show up, and pretty soon they're asking questions, and we have to give them answers for what's happening, and we have to show responsiveness for the weak links in our service that we provide Falcon Jet. So please consider this training as an important aspect of your job. Part of your job is to come to work. Can you imagine that? Anyway, so it is just that important that you do it. It's not just come when you want, leave when you want. There seems to be a lot of attitude that we just go home when we want to. Well, you can't just go home when you want to. If you're going to go home early, I'm going to make this very clear. First of all, if you're going to be late, you have to notify the supervisor you're going to be late, or you're not going to be there. Has to happen. Number 2, if you need to be off early, you must notify your supervisor that you have to leave early and why you have to leave early. You got to give us a why if you want it to be excused, not just because I want to be and I got a party to go to. That's not excused. You must let us know what's happening so that we can determine whether this is excused or unexcused, because the unexcused absenteeism, unexcused tardiness, the unexcused going home early, all these things add up and affect our contract compliance, and they must be brought into compliance with the ABM policy, which I've just read to you. So thank you, especially to those who do that very thing and are responsive and they are attentive to their attendance. And for the rest of you that have some issues there, take this opportunity to consider these things being said and bring it in alignment with the policy so that we don't have to continue down a path of corrective actions. Have a good day.